Amber and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, it's gonna be a little weird. I have never done a secret project, reading TBR, anything like that, and I'm kind of interested in how this is gonna go, and so bear with me. I'm interested in seeing if my favorite books of 2019 readers also enjoyed section is accurate or not. So I have my laptop open with me and I'm gonna pick a book from each of those readers also recommended sections for each of my favorite books, and I'm hoping to find also favorite books, because if these are books that readers also enjoyed from my favorite books, these should also be favorites, you know? I do have a couple of like loosely guided rules for myself. I'm not gonna make myself read a like 5th book in a series because that's what Goodreads thinks I'm gonna enjoy, but I'm also not going to make myself read the very first book that the readers also enjoyed suggested. I might pick something that's already on my TBR because, well, if it's already on my TBR, this thing might be a little more accurate for it, you know? So with that being said, let's get started. We're gonna start with The Right Swipe by Alicia Rai. We are gonna look for a book that possibly also deals with dating apps or a second chance romance, because that is also a prevalent theme. So one of those two things would probably be relevant for this one. And for this one, I'm gonna be picking A Prince on Paper, which is the 3rd book in the Reluctant Royal series by Alyssa Cole. I feel like this is slightly cheating because I have been reading this series. However, I'm interested in why I picked the 3rd one in the series, because it had picked the entire Playbook series by Alexa Martin and most of the Wedding Date series by Jasmine Guillory, but only the 3rd one for the Reluctant Royal series. So I'm going to be picking that one, mostly because I DNF'd most of this rest of this list or have already read it. So what I'm hearing is the similarities for this one in particular are a hit or miss. Next up is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. I feel like this one is going to be pretty hard to do because it is translated, and so I'm going to assume that the first chunk is going to be books that have not been translated, but we'll see. Okay, so yeah, looking at this list, it's a bunch of books that are in the original language that book is in. And then it's Daisy Jones and the Six, which I've already read. A Ruth Ware book, which is an interesting choice. And I don't know why that's there. Okay, so I'm picking Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. This one is about how much a family can forgive. So a lot of the other ones were literary fiction, minus the Ruth Ware book, but I'm still interested in why that one was there. The tagline is How Much Can a Family Forgive? And based on the themes that are in And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, this one seems the most similar. Next up is Red, White, and Royal Blue. I feel like this is going to be a real difficult one because I feel like, similarly to The Right Swipe, I've probably read most of this list. Okay, so looking at this list, it is a lot of the same list that The Right Swipe had. I'm assuming it's going to be a similar list to the Unhoneymooners as well, so I should probably be a little wary. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to be reading The Music of What Happens by Bill Kongsegi Berg. It is about over the course of one summer, 2 boys will have to face their biggest fears and decide what they're willing to risk to get the thing they want the most. I'm wondering if this thing is just recommending releases from that year that have similar vibes at this point, or just were releases from that year that were also popular, because this is a release from that year. So I'm going to be reading The Music of What Happens by Bill Kongsberg. Up is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This one has like a hate to love romance going on in it, but again, I'm based on the fact that apparently all my romance books are recommending the same romance books, I'm wondering if it's just going to recommend me a different book from the same time. So let me see what books it recommends. Okay, so yeah, I'm starting to see a lot of repeats for romance books that came out. Oh, a book I just read. I could have read that book for this project, but oh well. Yeah, I'm only seeing books that are from this time frame and none of them are relevant. Because my friend Mel told me that I should read this one, I'm gonna do this one for my friend Mel, and because it popped up, and I'm gonna be reading The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. My friend Mel said that this book sounds similar to my top favorite shelf in general, and The Unhoneymooners made its way to my top favorite shelf that I have on Goodreads. So I'm going to be reading The Simple Wild because it is on this shelf and it is like, it makes sense. So I'm going to be reading The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. Next up is The Romance Book Club by Lisa K. Adams. This one probably was my favorite, and I'm really nervous to pick a book for this one. I'm probably gonna pick a contemporary romance that doesn't feel like a romance. So let me look at that list. Oh, I definitely know what I'm picking. I'm picking The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. Everybody keeps saying that this one is a romance that's kind of a little bit heavier, but it doesn't feel like a romance. So I'm picking The Flat Share. This one was a super easy answer. So I'm gonna be reading The Flat Share for the Romance Book Club. The last thing that I have to pick a book for is The Wicked King or Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. And I'm convinced it's gonna be picking fantasy books or fantasy sequels. And I'm a little nervous. So let's figure out what it's gonna recommend to me. It's recommending me books I've already read. It's recommending me books I've already read. Okay, so what I'm learning is it's not like personalized based on just like doing this bit. I'm gonna be picking The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chachki for this one because this one is the most fantasy-esque one that I haven't read. The only one that I haven't read that was on my TBR was The Gilded Wolves. And I said at the beginning that I was probably going to be more inclined to pick ones that I hadn't read that were on my TBR. Okay, for a quick summary. For the right swipe, I'm going to be reading A Prince on Paper. For Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, I'm going to be reading Ask Again Yes. For Red, White, and Royal Blue, I'm going to be reading The Music of What Happens. For the Unhoneymooners, I'm going to be reading The Simple Wild. For the Bromance Book Club, I'm going to be reading The Flat Share. And for The Wicked King, which is the one I had been looking at, I'm going to be reading The Gilded Wolf. Okay, so I'm going to be checking back in when I start my first book and tell you how I feel. And this is so nerve-wracking. I'll let you know how I'm feeling about a book, specifically based in reference to how I feel about the book that I read in reference to it. Okay? Okay, so I have finished my first book and I did one of those binge read and didn't check in things. Oops. But I can talk about how I felt about it in comparison, so it's fine. Basically, I read all of Ask Again Yes in one sitting. I had to kind of binge read it because my hold was coming up soon because it took me a while to make sure that the first portion of this video made sense in reference to the second portion, and then when it did, my hold was almost up. I wanted to make sure I got it read. You know how it goes. I read this book in particular because of the book and Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, and I can see why this book would be recommended for readers of that book and people who enjoyed this book, because despite the fact that Ask Again Yes is a story about a family saga and it takes place over 40 years, it definitely is still slice of life in the way that an Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer is. It still talks about one specific family, even though it's technically it still talks about, you know, how this particular family is dealing with this specific issue throughout their life. And Ask Again Yes, one of the big things that I loved about it was the writing, and that it was one of the big things that I had loved about And Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. Unfortunately for me, Ask Again Yes is not going to be a new favorite of mine. I didn't like the narrative structure of it. The fact that it is spanning, you know, 3 generations, 40 years, is you have a lot to try to do with spanning all of those characters within that time frame, and it ended up becoming a little muddled, jumping back and forth between characters, especially in certain chapters. You would be jumping between characters and situations and jumping between each character, and while the writing was really beautiful in those moments, it just didn't flow the way it should have, in my opinion, and it didn't flow seamlessly, in my opinion. Overall, I gave Ask Again Yes 4 stars and am going to give them a thumbs up for doing a good job on this Goodreads Readers Also Enjoy section. I have started my next book. I'm currently listening to The Music of What Happens, and I listened to a bit of it at work today, and I am in a dilemma. I kind of already messed up on this challenge, but not really. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this book. Basically, I'm reading The Music of What Happens for Red, White, and Royal Blue, and this book was a book by an author who I had previously DNF'd a book from. And that normally doesn't deter me from reading books that I DNF from. However, I had DNF'd this other book from this author back when I like never DNF'd books, and this is making me a little worried because I didn't DNF books back when I only read like 20 books a year, and I remember DNFing this other book by this author. So I'm a little worried right now that I am going
to not enjoy this as much as I could possibly have picked a different book for, and especially since as of right now I'm not super enjoying it. I do understand why this book would have been picked though, because they both follow queer boys going through like personal things, and they're both personal journeys obviously. However, overall right now I'm not super loving it, but I obviously have to finish it. But I'm gonna continue to listen to it and continue my homework, and hopefully before the end of today I will have finished it and I'll check back in. So I have finished the music of What Happens, and unfortunately I did not super enjoy it, and I'm giving it a 2-star. However, with that being said, I do completely understand why it is being placed in the Readers Also Enjoy section for Red, White, and Royal Blue. They both have similar themes. Both of them follow queer male protagonists, and both of them are slice of life, which makes sense as to why it would be, you know, something similar, as well as there is mental illness aspects to the stories. However, this one lost me on the characters in general. I just didn't feel for them. This one, however, did also lose me in the betrayal of the mental illness aspect. That being said, I will say that this one makes sense, but overall is a flop for me on the Readers Also Enjoys section. Okay, so I asked my partner and my cousin to basically pick my next book because I didn't know which of my remaining books I wanted to read next, and they decided that I was going to be reading The Gilded Wolves next. I'm excited. This one is the only fantasy book on my TBR, and they were like, we want you to read the fantasy book. And I was like, okay. We will shake things up and read the fantasy book. It makes sense. This is my day off, and the fantasy book would make the most sense on my day off. And so I'm excited. We're gonna read The Gilded Wolves today. It is in my apartment, so I will go pick that up, and we're gonna read it today because of The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing. So I'm hopeful that this will be a good pick. I am noticing, however, that every book that I have read so far did come out the same year as the book that it recommended. So that's definitely a second thing I've noticed. So let's figure out what I feel about The Gilded Wolves. Okay, so I'm a little bit into The Gilded Wolves, and I'm liking it a fair bit. It took me some time to get into the writing style, but that didn't surprise me because I had read a previous work by Roshni Tatki and I had not liked the writing style. This book I had picked because it had been on my TBR, obviously, and I felt that this one was the most fantastical, but also most grounded in reality of the books that it was recommending me, and I wanted a book that was both fantastical and grounded in reality, and this book is so far fitting that bill. This one is about a group of characters trying to retrieve objects for this basically dishonored heir to this throne, basically dishonored heir, and basically trying to retrieve these objects. The opening was really exciting, and I'm enjoying this so far. It just took me some time to get into the writing style, and I'm looking forward to finishing this one off, and Lily is excited as well. So I'm hopeful that I will finish this one soon, and I will give you an update on how I'm feeling about it. Okay, so I have 2 updates for you. One, I finished The Gilded Wolves. I ended up giving this book 4 stars because of the fact that I had struggled with the writing in the beginning of the book. This was no surprise to me because of the fact that me and Roshni Tatki's writing style sometimes don't get along. However, I loved the magic system as well as I love the magic system in this story as well as the world that she crafted and how it is interwoven into our own regular world, which is why I believe it was a suggested book for The Wicked King, which is why I believe this is a good choice for a Readers Also Recommend. Finishing The Gilded Wolves, I have started The Flat Share. This one is basically about 2 people who have been sharing this apartment and this bed. They have never met. This one I'm reading for probably my favorite book of last year, the Romance Book Club, and I definitely see how these 2 books make the most sense for being matches because of the fact that they both are sneaky, get you in their feelings books about characters who, you know, are real people, but also slightly romance books. And I'm really enjoying this one, so we shall see. Lily has all of the opinions about everything always. Mwah. Okay, so since we last talked, I have finished The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary,
and I ended up giving it 3 stars. It took me some time to update you because I was trying to decide how I felt, but overall I didn't like how Leon's chapters were written. It made it really hard for me to understand his perspective, and it didn't work for me formatting wise, so I overall gave it 3 stars. However, I do understand why this is a specific match for Readers Also Enjoyed because of the subject matter of this book. As I said in my previous update, because this book is a, you know, sneaky get you in your feels about real people dealing with relationships instead of meet cutes, which a lot of the romance books that I read typically are. This one isn't kind of a meet cute kind of story. It deals with heavier topics while also being a romance book. So even though I didn't super enjoy this one, I do see how this one was a Readers Also Enjoyed. This one is kind of a fail for me specifically on me enjoying it as well. Also, while I was sick, I ended up reading The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I don't quite have as many thoughts about this one because I was super sick while I was reading this one. However, I can, you know, say that I really enjoyed this one. It has a deeper emotional impact than The Unhoneymooners did for me, despite it being the book comparable to The Unhoneymooners, because it deals with familial issues and romance and the Alaskan Wild. So this one was a better pick for me for this topic, and I'm definitely intrigued enough to want to continue on because this is the first book in the series. However, I don't understand why this one specifically was picked for The Unhoneymooners because I don't see any kind of connections. However, they both were released the same year, so there's your connection. That being said, the only thing I have left is A Prince on Paper by Alyssa Cole. So let's get started. And we're back to wrap up A Prince on Paper and explain why it was kind of similar to The Right Swipe. Basically, this one had dealt with a protagonist who liked dating sims. The protagonist has a dating app. I thought that, and I feel like that might have something to do with it, a leap because these are both authors of color. I ended up giving this one a 4 star. However, Prince on Paper is one of my favorite full-length novels in this series, so I again understand why it was picked for this one. However, it was not a new all-time favorite, which means that every book in this project was not a new all-time favorite for me, and I didn't give any book in this project 5 stars. So what did we learn? We learned that the Goodreads Readers Also Enjoyed section is not based on your own personal what you've also enjoyed based on this book. It is, or anything based on this book, it is based on books that also came out that year that are in the same vein, be it the genre or some minuscule like detail in the story, and that is something it is running with for that section. Overall, they are not unique to you. However, it is a good guide to deciding what could be a next potential favorite read. However, for me, I didn't find my next potential favorite read, but I did find reads that I enjoyed. So that is the end of this video. What about you? Have you ever used the Goodreads Readers Also Enjoyed section to find a new favorite book? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like what you saw here today, be sure to like and subscribe. I don't really post videos on Wednesdays. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.